Captain Sarah Chan walked through the corridors of Ramstein Air Base in Germany, carrying a tray of steaming coffee cups. Her boots made soft, clicking sounds against the polished floor as she navigated toward the briefing room. The morning sun filtered through the tall windows, casting long shadows across the hallway. She had volunteered to bring refreshments to the visiting pilots who were scheduled for an important mission briefing. Sarah wore her standard Air Force uniform, crisp and professional. On her left sleeve, several patches told the story of her military career. Most people noticed her name tape and ranked first, but today would be different. Today, someone would see something that would change everything. The briefing room buzzed with conversation as Sarah entered. 12 pilots from different squadrons had gathered for what they believed would be a routine transport mission briefing. They sat around a large conference table, maps and documents spread before them. The mission coordinator, Colonel Martinez, stood at the front of the room reviewing his notes. "Coffee's here," Sarah announced cheerfully, setting the tray down on a side table. The pilots looked up, offering polite thanks and nods. Most barely glanced at her, focused on their pre-mission discussions and paperwork. In their minds, she was just another support staff member helping with the logistics. Among the pilots was Captain Jake Morrison, a seasoned C-130 Hercules pilot with over 15 years of experience. He had flown missions in Iraq, Afghanistan, and countless training exercises across Europe. Jake prided himself on his attention to detail and his ability to read people quickly. He had a reputation for being thorough and cautious, traits that had kept him and his crew safe through many challenging flights. As Sarah moved around the room, offering coffee to each pilot, Jake absently thanked her without looking up from his flight charts. He was studying the proposed route for their mission to deliver supplies to a remote outpost in Eastern Europe. The weather forecast showed possible turbulence, and he wanted to identify alternative approaches. "Sugar and cream are on the tray," Sarah mentioned as she placed a cup near Jake's elbow. Something in her voice made him glance up briefly. She had moved on to the next pilot, but Jake's eyes lingered for a moment longer than usual. Colonel Martinez called the room to attention. "Gentlemen, let's begin the briefing. This mission has been classified as routine supply delivery, but I want everyone sharp. The destination airfield has challenging approach conditions, and weather may be a factor." Sarah quietly took a seat in the back of the room. As a logistics coordinator, she often sat in on briefings to understand mission requirements and coordinate ground support. The pilots paid her no mind, their attention focused entirely on the colonel's presentation. Jake listened carefully as Martinez outlined the mission parameters. They would be flying 3 C-130s in formation, carrying medical supplies, food, and equipment to a forward operating base near the Ukrainian border. The round trip would take approximately 8 hours, with a 2-hour layover for refueling and cargo inspection. Weather conditions are marginal, Martinez continued, pointing to satellite images on the large screen. "We're looking at possible icing conditions above 10,000 feet and crosswinds at the destination of 15 to 20 knots, gusting to 30. Several pilots shifted in their seats. Crosswinds of that strength would make landing challenging, especially at an unfamiliar airfield. Jake made notes on his chart, marking potential hazards and backup plans. "Captain Morrison will be lead aircraft," Martinez announced. "His crew has the most experience with this type of challenging approach." Jake nodded, accepting the responsibility. Being lead meant making crucial decisions that would affect all 3 aircraft and their crews. As the technical briefing continued, Sarah quietly reviewed her own checklist. Her job involved coordinating ground crews, fuel trucks, and cargo handlers. She needed to ensure everything was ready when the aircraft returned. Most people assumed logistics was simple paperwork, but Sarah knew that small mistakes in her department could doom entire missions. The colonel discussed communication protocols, emergency procedures, and contingency plans. Jake absorbed every detail, occasionally asking clarifying questions. The other pilots did the same, their professional focus evident in their serious expressions and detailed note-taking. "Questions so far?" Martinez asked, pausing in his presentation. Captain Reynolds, one of the younger pilots, raised his hand. Sir, what's the backup plan if weather deteriorates while we're en route? Good question. We have 3 alternate airfields identified, all within fuel range. Sarah Chun from Logistics has coordinated refueling capabilities at each location. Martinez gestured toward the back of the room. For the first time, all 12 pilots turned to look at Sarah. She stood briefly and nodded. All alternate locations have been confirmed for fuel availability and ground handling equipment. I've also arranged for overnight accommodations if weather delays extend the mission. Jake studied her as she spoke. Her voice carried confidence and authority that seemed inconsistent with what he assumed was her junior role. Something about her bearing suggested more experience than her apparent position indicated. Thank you, Sarah, Martinez continued. Now, let's discuss the cargo manifest. The briefing progressed through technical details about weight distribution, center of gravity calculations, and loading procedures. Jake found himself occasionally glancing toward the back of the room, where Sarah continued taking notes. Her attention to detail impressed him, and he noticed she asked intelligent questions when Martinez covered logistics topics. After 90 minutes, Martinez concluded the formal briefing. Takeoff is scheduled for 1400 hours. Final weather briefing at 1300. Any final questions? The pilots began gathering their materials and discussing last-minute preparations. Jake organized his charts and checklists, his mind already working through the mission profile. He had flown similar routes before, but each mission presented unique challenges. As the room emptied, Jake noticed Sarah organizing papers and cleaning up the coffee service. Something compelled him to approach her. Thanks for the coffee, he said, genuinely meaning it, and for coordinating the alternate airfields. That kind of preparation makes our job easier. Sarah looked up and smiled. Just doing my job, Captain. Safe flight today. Jake was about to leave when something caught his eye. As Sarah reached across the table to collect empty cups, her uniform's sleeve shifted slightly, revealing the edge of a patch he hadn't noticed before. Most of it remained hidden, but what he could see made him pause. The partial view showed what appeared to be wings and part of a distinctive emblem. Jake's experience told him this wasn't a standard Air Force patch. The design elements he could make out suggested something much more specialized, something that would completely change his understanding of who Sarah Chun really was. Excuse me, Jake said, his voice suddenly more formal. I couldn't help but notice. He gestured toward her sleeve. Sarah followed his gaze and realized what had caught his attention. Her expression changed subtly, becoming more guarded. She had been careful to keep that particular patch concealed, but Jake's trained eyed spotted it. The room had emptied except for the 2 of them. Colonel Martinez had left for another meeting, and the other pilots had departed to prepare their aircraft. The sudden silence felt heavy with unspoken questions. Jake's mind raced as he tried to piece together what he was seeing. The partial patch, combined with Sarah's obvious competence and military bearing, suggested possibilities that seemed almost impossible. Women in certain specialized roles were rare, and the specific unit that patch might represent was even rarer. Captain, Sarah said carefully, I should get back to work. Lots to coordinate before takeoff. But Jake couldn't let it go. His experience in the military had taught him to trust his instincts, and every instinct was telling him that Sarah Chun was not who she appeared to be. The way she carried herself, her detailed knowledge of flight operations, and now this mysterious patch all pointed to something extraordinary. Sarah, he said, using her first name deliberately, what unit are you actually with? The question hung in the air between them. Sarah's hesitation confirmed Jake's growing suspicion that there was much more to her story than anyone realized. The woman who had quietly served coffee and coordinated logistics might be hiding credentials that would shock everyone in that room. Outside, the sound of aircraft engines warming up reminded them both that time was short. The mission would launch in a few hours, and Jake needed to focus on the dangerous flight ahead. But he couldn't shake the feeling that understanding who Sarah really was might be more important than he imagined. Sarah looked directly at Jake, seeming to weigh her options. The careful mask she had maintained throughout the briefing was beginning to slip, revealing glimpses of someone far more complex than the logistics coordinator everyone assumed her to be. "It's complicated," she said finally, her voice carrying undertones that Jake couldn't quite identify. The simple phrase only deepened the mystery, leaving Jake with more questions than answers as he prepared for what he thought would be a routine supply mission. He had no idea that the woman standing before him would soon prove to be exactly the person they needed when everything went wrong. 3 hours after the briefing, Jake Morrison climbed into the cockpit of his C-130 Hercules. The massive aircraft sat on the tarmac at Ramstein Air Base, its 4 turboprop engines gleaming in the afternoon sunlight. His co-pilot, Lieutenant Maria Gonzalez, was already running through the pre-flight checklist. In the cargo bay behind them, loadmasters secured the final pallets of medical supplies and equipment. "Weather update shows conditions deteriorating at the destination," Gonzalez reported, handing Jake the latest meteorological report. "Crosswinds are now gusting to 35 knots, and visibility is dropping due to snow squalls." Jake studied the report carefully. The mission was becoming more challenging by the hour, but still within acceptable parameters for experienced crews. He had flown in worse conditions, though not often with such critical cargo, and a formation of 3 aircraft to coordinate. Through his side window, Jake could see the other 2 C-130s preparing for departure. Captain Reynolds commanded the second aircraft, while Captain Thompson led the third. All 3 crews were seasoned professionals, but Jake felt the weight of responsibility as formation leader. "Tower, this is Heavy 1 requesting taxi clearance." Jake radioed to the control tower. "Heavy 1, clear to taxi runway 27. Wind 240 at 15, gusting to 22." The 3 aircraft moved in sequence toward the active runway. Jake's crew completed their final checks while maintaining radio contact with the other planes. Everything appeared normal as they prepared for takeoff into increasingly challenging weather. Meanwhile, Sarah Chun sat in the Logistics Operations Center, monitoring radio communications and tracking the mission's progress. Multiple screens displayed weather data, flight paths, and fuel calculations. Her job required constant vigilance to ensure support resources remained available throughout the mission duration. But Sarah was far from the simple logistics coordinator everyone believed her to be. The patch Jake had partially glimpsed told a story that few people knew. Hidden beneath her current assignment was a background that would astonish the pilots now preparing for takeoff. Sarah had graduated from the Air Force Academy 15 years earlier, ranking 3rd in her class in aeronautical engineering. She had initially served as a pilot herself, flying various aircraft, including the C-130 Hercules that Jake now commanded. Her flying skills had been exceptional, earning recognition from instructors and peers alike. After completing basic pilot training, Sarah had been selected for specialized programs that few officers ever experienced. She had trained with elite units, learned advanced combat techniques, and developed expertise in high-risk operations. The patch that Jake had spotted represented one of the most challenging assignments in the Air Force. For 8 years, Sarah had served with Air Force Special Operations Command, flying missions that remained classified even now. She had piloted aircraft into hostile territory, extracted Special Forces teams under enemy fire, and completed operations that pushed both equipment and crew to their absolute limits. The hidden patch on her sleeve bore the insignia of the 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment, known as the Night Stalkers. This unit represented the pinnacle of military aviation, accepting only the most skilled and experienced pilots. Sarah had been one of only 12 women ever selected for their ranks. Her transition to logistics work had come after a mission in Afghanistan that changed everything. Sarah had been piloting a modified C-130 during a night extraction when enemy forces had surrounded the landing zone. Multiple aircraft had been damaged by ground fire, and several crew members had been wounded. Sarah had made split-second decisions that saved lives, but cost her aircraft. She had managed an emergency landing in hostile territory, coordinated with ground forces to establish a defensive perimeter and personally treated wounded crew members while waiting for rescue. The mission had been successful, but the physical and emotional toll had been enormous. Following her recovery from injuries sustained during that operation, Sarah had requested transfer to support roles. She told her commanding officers that she wanted to use her experience to help other aircrews succeed and survive. Few people knew the real reason for her transition from flying to logistics. Now, as she monitored Jake's mission, Sarah felt familiar anxiety building in her chest. Weather conditions at the destination were deteriorating rapidly, and she could see potential problems developing. Her experience warned her that this routine supply mission might become anything but routine. Heavy formation. This is Ramstein operations, Sarah radioed to the departing aircraft. Latest weather shows visibility dropping to 1 mile at destination. Recommend evaluating alternate airfields. Jake's voice crackled back through the radio. Operations, Heavy 1. We're monitoring conditions. Current forecast still shows marginal VFR at arrival time. Sarah checked her instruments again. The automated weather station at the destination airfield was reporting conditions that bordered on unsafe for formation flying. Snow was falling steadily, and winds were shifting unpredictably. Heavy formation. Be advised that alternate airfield Alpha has confirmed availability for emergency diversion. Fuel trucks are standing by. Copy operations. Heavy formation proceeding as planned. 2 hours into the flight, Jake began to understand Sarah's concerns. Weather conditions had deteriorated faster than predicted, and maintaining formation was becoming increasingly difficult. Ice was forming on the aircraft's wings despite de-icing equipment, and visibility was dropping to dangerous levels. Heavy 2, are you maintaining visual contact? Jake radioed to Captain Reynolds. Heavy 1, I have you on instruments only. Visual contact lost due to snow. This was exactly the situation Jake had hoped to avoid. Flying in formation without visual contact required precise navigation and constant communication. One small error could result in a mid-air collision. Heavy formation, break to individual navigation. Maintain standard separation and proceed independently to destination. Breaking formation was a significant decision, but Jake knew it was the safest option under current conditions. Each aircraft would now approach the destination alone, reducing the risk of collision while increasing the complexity of the landing pattern. Sarah watched the radar displays in the operations center as the 3 aircraft separated. Her experience told her they were approaching a critical decision point. Weather at the destination was now below minimums for safe landing, but the aircraft were too far committed to return to Ramstein without refueling. Heavy 1, this is operations. Destination weather is now reporting visibility half-mile in heavy snow, crosswinds 40 knots gusting to 50. Recommend immediate diversion to alternate Alpha. Jake studied his instruments and considered the situation. Alternate Alpha was a civilian airport in Poland with limited military support capabilities. Landing there would require coordination with local authorities and could complicate the mission significantly. Operations, Heavy 1. What's the weather at alternate Alpha? Sarah checked her displays. Heavy 1. Alternate Alpha reports overcast at 800 feet. Visibility 3 miles. Winds 270 at 12 knots. Much better conditions. Before Jake could respond, Captain Thompson's voice cut through the radio chatter. Heavy 1. Heavy 3 declaring emergency. We have engine failure on number 2. Losing altitude and requesting immediate assistance. The situation had suddenly become critical. Thompson's aircraft was in trouble, and Jake had to make rapid decisions that could affect all 3 crews. Emergency procedures required immediate coordination and precise execution. Heavy 3, Heavy 1. Understand engine failure. What is your current position and altitude? Heavy 1. We're approximately 60 miles south of destination, descending through 8,000 feet. Engine restart attempts unsuccessful. Jake's mind raced through options. Thompson's aircraft could likely reach the destination on 3 engines, but landing in the severe weather conditions would be extremely dangerous. The alternate airfield was farther away, but offered much safer landing conditions. Sarah listened to the emergency communications while rapidly calculating fuel consumption and flight distances. Her experience with similar situations told her that Thompson's crew was in serious danger. A single-engine approach in severe weather had claimed many aircraft and crews. Heavy formation, this is operations, Sarah transmitted, her voice calm but urgent. I strongly recommend all aircraft divert immediately to alternate alpha. Weather conditions at destination are below emergency minimums. Jake appreciated Sarah's input, but he also felt pressure to complete the mission. The supplies they carried were urgently needed by ground forces, and diverting to Poland would cause significant delays. Heavy 3. Can you maintain current altitude? Negative, Heavy 1. We're continuing to lose altitude slowly. We need to land within 30 minutes. The decision was made for him. Thompson's crew needed immediate assistance, and Jake couldn't risk 3 aircraft and their crews on a dangerous approach to an airport with impossible weather conditions. Heavy formation. Divert immediately to alternate alpha. Heavy 3. Your priority for approach and landing. As the 3 aircraft changed course toward Poland, Sarah began coordinating with multiple agencies. She contacted the Polish authorities to arrange emergency landing clearance, called fuel suppliers to ensure refueling capabilities, and alerted medical personnel in case Thompson's crew needed assistance. Her actions represented exactly the kind of thorough preparation that separated professional logistics officers from amateur coordinators. But Sarah's knowledge went far beyond normal logistics training. She understood aircraft emergency procedures because she had lived through them herself. Jake focused on flying his aircraft while maintaining communication with his formation. The decision to divert had been correct, but he couldn't shake the feeling that Sarah's advice had been more than routine operational support. Her voice had carried authority that suggested deep personal experience with aviation emergencies. Unknown to Jake, Sarah was drawing on memories of her own emergency landings, failed missions, and life-or-death decisions made in cockpits under extreme pressure. The woman coordinating their emergency diversion had faced similar situations from the pilot's seat, and her experience would prove invaluable in the hours ahead. The emergency landing at Krakow Airport in Poland unfolded with precision that impressed even experienced controllers. Captain Thompson's C-130, flying on 3 engines, touched down safely despite challenging crosswinds and low visibility. Jake's aircraft followed second, with Captain Reynolds bringing up the rear. All 3 crews had managed the emergency diversion without incident. Polish ground crews rushed to assist Thompson's aircraft as soon as it cleared the runway. Emergency vehicles surrounded the plane, their red and blue lights flashing in the gray afternoon light. Thompson shut down his remaining engines and opened the cargo doors to allow inspection of the failed engine. Jake climbed down from his cockpit, grateful to be on solid ground after the stressful flight. The weather in Poland was significantly better than what they had escaped, but snow still fell steadily across the airport. He needed to coordinate with Polish authorities and determine how long repairs might take. Captain Morrison, a Polish officer, approached with an interpreter. I am Colonel Kowalski, base commander here. We have been contacted by your operations center. How can we assist? Jake shook hands with the colonel, appreciating the immediate cooperation. Thank you for accommodating our emergency landing. We need to assess engine damage and possibly arrange replacement aircraft or parts. Of course, our maintenance personnel are available to assist your crews. We also have accommodations arranged if you must remain overnight. While Jake handled official coordination, his thoughts kept returning to Sarah Chun back at Ramstein. Her quick thinking and thorough preparation had undoubtedly saved lives today. The alternate airfield arrangements, emergency coordination, and weather monitoring have been flawless. At Ramstein Air Base, Sarah remained in the operations center monitoring the situation. Multiple communication channels carried updates from Poland, weather reports, and coordination messages for various agencies. Her screens showed the successful landing of all three aircraft, but her work was far from finished. Operations, this is Heavy 1 on ground in Krakow. Jake's voice came through the radio. All aircraft safely landed. Heavy 3 has significant engine damage. Requesting guidance on repair timeline and mission continuation. Sarah had already anticipated this situation. During the flight, she had contacted maintenance specialists, arranged for replacement parts, and coordinated with higher headquarters about mission alternatives. Her experience told her that Thompson's aircraft would require major repairs that couldn't be completed in Poland. Heavy 1 operations. Maintenance assessment indicates Heavy 3 will require engine replacement. Parts and technicians are being arranged, but timeline is approximately 72 hours minimum. Jake absorbed this information while watching Polish mechanics examine Thompson's damaged engine. The turboprop had suffered internal failure that scattered metal fragments throughout the housing. Flying the aircraft again would require complete engine replacement. Operations, what about mission completion? The supplies we're carrying are priority items. Sarah had been working on this problem since the emergency began. She had contacted logistics coordinators at multiple bases, arranged alternative transportation, and developed several options for completing the original mission. Heavy 1. 2 alternatives available. Option 1. Continue mission with Heavy 1 and Heavy 2. Deliver supplies as planned. Return to Ramstein. Option 2. Polish Air Force has offered transport assistance to deliver supplies via ground convoy. Your aircraft returned to Ramstein immediately. Jay considered both options while discussing the situation with Reynolds. Continuing the mission with 2 aircraft was possible, but weather conditions at the original destination remained dangerous. Ground transport would ensure delivery, but might take several additional days. Operations, current weather at original destination. Sarah checked her latest reports. Heavy 1, destination weather has improved slightly. Visibility 2 miles, crosswinds 25 gusting to 35. Still challenging, but within limits for experienced crews. The decision weighed heavily on Jake's mind. As mission commander, he felt responsible for both completing the objective and ensuring crew safety. The supplies they carried included critical medical equipment needed by forward operating bases. Heavy 1 requesting private communication with operations. Sarah understood immediately and switched to a secure channel. Go ahead, Heavy 1. Operations, I want your honest assessment. You've been providing excellent support today, and your judgment has been spot on. What do you recommend? Sarah paused, knowing that her response could influence a decision affecting multiple lives and military objectives. Her hidden experience as a special operations pilot informed her analysis, but she couldn't reveal that background without raising uncomfortable questions. Heavy 1, based on current conditions and crew fatigue factors, I recommend overnight delay in Poland. Weather forecasts show significant improvement by tomorrow morning. Risk assessment favors waiting over attempting approach in current marginal conditions. Jake appreciated the thoughtful response. Sarah's recommendation aligned with his own instincts, but he valued having his judgment confirmed by someone monitoring the broader situation. Copy operations. Heavy formation will remain overnight in Poland. Please coordinate with Polish authorities and arrange mission continuation tomorrow morning. As evening approached, the 3 American crews settled into accommodations arranged by their Polish hosts. The airport hotel was comfortable, and the restaurants served hearty meals that helped restore morale after the stressful day. Jake found himself relaxing for the first time since the morning briefing. During dinner, conversations naturally turned to the day's events and the excellent coordination they had received from Ramstein operations. Captain Reynolds mentioned how impressed he was with the logistic support, particularly the quick arrangement of alternate landing sites. That operations coordinator really knew her stuff, Reynolds commented over his meal. Most logistics people just push paperwork, but she seemed to understand aviation operations from a pilot's perspective. Jake nodded, remembering his earlier conversation with Sarah and the mysterious patch he had glimpsed. Sarah Chun, I got the impression there's more to her background than meets the eye. Captain Thompson, whose crew had been most affected by the emergency, was particularly grateful. Her weather monitoring probably saved our lives. If we had continued to the original destination with that engine failure, we might not have made it. The comment reinforced Jake's growing respect for Sarah's professional competence. But it also deepened his curiosity about her background and the specialized patch he had partially seen. Back at Ramstein, Sarah continued monitoring the situation despite her duty shift officially ending hours earlier. She maintained communication with Polish authorities, tracked weather developments, and coordinated with maintenance specialists about Thompson's aircraft. Her dedication went beyond normal job requirements, driven partly by professional pride and partly by personal memories she couldn't share. Every aviation emergency reminded her of similar situations she had faced as a pilot, and every successful coordination helped validate her decision to transition from flying to support roles. Colonel Martinez stopped by the operations center to check on the situation. "Sarah, excellent work today. Your preparation and quick thinking undoubtedly prevented a serious incident." "Thank you, sir. Just doing my job. It was more than that, and we both know it. Your coordination was exceptional, even by our standards." Martinez studied Sarah for a moment, recognizing competence that exceeded typical logistics training. As her commanding officer, he had access to her complete service record and understood exactly what experience she brought to her current position. "The crews don't know about your background, do they?" Sarah shook her head. "No, sir. I prefer it that way. It helps me focus on the current mission without constantly explaining or justifying past decisions." Martinez understood her reasoning. Sarah's transition from special operations pilot to logistics coordinator had been unusual and sometimes questioned by personnel officers who didn't understand her motivations. Her exceptional performance in her current role validated the decision, but some people still wondered why such a skilled pilot had chosen ground duties. "Captain Morrison seemed particularly appreciative of your support today. He specifically mentioned your professionalism and judgment. He's a good pilot, sir. His crew handled the emergency very well. Perhaps you should consider revealing more about your background. It might help other air crews understand the level of expertise available in our logistics department." Sarah considered this suggestion while reviewing the next day's weather forecasts. She had deliberately kept her flying background private to avoid complications and questions about her career transition. But today's events had reminded her how much her pilot experience enhanced her current effectiveness. "I'll think about it, sir." As night fell over both Poland and Germany, the three air crews rested while Sarah continued planning their mission continuation. Weather forecasts showed clearing conditions, and she had already coordinated fuel, flight plans, and destination preparations for the next day's departure. Her work exemplified the behind-the-scenes efforts that made complex military operations possible. But Sarah's unique combination of pilot experience and logistics expertise represented capabilities that few people fully understood or appreciated. Jake Morrison would sleep well that night, confident that the coordination and support they had received represented the best of Air Force professionalism. He had no idea that the woman providing that support had faced emergencies far more challenging than anything he had experienced, or that her hidden background made her ideally qualified to guide them through whatever challenges tomorrow might bring. The mystery of Sarah's patch and her obvious competence would soon be revealed in ways that would astonish everyone involved in the mission. But for now, she remained content to work quietly behind the scenes, using her hard-earned expertise to keep other air crews safe and successful. Morning came early at Krakow Airport as the American air crews prepared for mission continuation. Weather conditions had improved dramatically overnight, with clear skies and light winds replacing the previous day's snow and turbulence. Jake Morrison felt optimistic as he reviewed flight plans and coordinated with Polish authorities. Captain Thompson's damaged aircraft would remain in Poland for extensive repairs, but the crew would return to Ramstein aboard one of the other C-130s. The critical medical supplies would be divided between Jake's and Reynolds' aircraft to complete the original mission. Heavy 1, This is Ramstein Operations. Sarah's familiar voice came through the radio during pre-flight communications. Weather at destination is now clear, winds light, and variable. No significant weather between your position and objective. Jake smiled, hearing the same professional competence that had guided them through yesterday's emergency. Operations, Heavy 1. Excellent news. We're planning departure in 30 minutes with revised cargo distribution. Copy, Heavy 1. All destination preparations confirmed. Ground crews and fuel services are standing by. As the two remaining aircraft prepared for takeoff, Jake reflected on how smoothly everything had proceeded despite the previous day's complications. The logistics coordination had been flawless, and their current mission looked straightforward compared to the weather emergency they had navigated. Takeoff from Krakow went perfectly, with both aircraft climbing into clear blue skies. The flight to their original destination proceeded without incident, and Jake began to relax as they approached the final phases of their delayed mission. Destination in sight, Lieutenant Gonzalez announced from the co-pilot's seat. Field conditions look excellent. The forward operating base appeared below them, a collection of temporary buildings and equipment surrounded by security perimeters. The runway was short but adequate for C-130 operations, and ground crews were already positioned to begin unloading operations. Jake executed a smooth landing, followed closely by Captain Reynolds. Both aircraft taxied to designated parking areas where crews of soldiers waited to unload the medical supplies and equipment. The mission that had started with such complications was ending successfully. Outstanding work, heavy formation, came Sarah's voice as they completed shutdown procedures. Mission accomplished with no delays to critical supply delivery. Jake felt genuine satisfaction as he climbed down from his aircraft. The challenging weather, emergency landing, and overnight delay had tested everyone involved, but professional competence had prevailed. He particularly appreciated the excellent coordination from Sarah and the logistics team. After supervising cargo, unloading, and refueling operations, Jake had time to reflect on the past 2 days. The emergency had highlighted how dependent flight crews were on skilled ground support, and Sarah's performance had been exceptional even by military standards. The return flight to Ramstein proceeded without incident. Both aircraft landed safely in late afternoon, ending a mission that had taught everyone valuable lessons about teamwork, emergency procedures, and the importance of thorough preparation. Back in the operations center, Sarah monitored the final approach and landing. Seeing both aircraft safely home brought genuine relief, even though she had maintained professional calm throughout the crisis. Her background as a pilot made her acutely aware of the risks involved in military aviation. Excellent coordination throughout this mission, Colonel Martinez commented as he reviewed the final reports. Your preparation and decision-making were instrumental in the successful outcome. Thank you, sir. It was a team effort by everyone involved. As the air crews completed post-flight procedures and debriefings, Jake found himself walking toward the operations center. He wanted to personally thank Sarah for her outstanding support, and he remained curious about the glimpse of her mysterious patch. The operations center was busy with personnel coordinating multiple ongoing missions. Sarah sat at her workstation, completing paperwork and updating status boards. She looked up as Jake approached, offering a professional smile. Captain Morrison, welcome back. I trust everything went smoothly after the weather cleared. Perfectly, thanks to your excellent coordination. I wanted to thank you personally for your support during the emergency. Your preparation and decision-making were outstanding. Sarah appreciated the recognition, but remained modest. Just doing my job, Captain. I'm glad everyone made it back safely. Jake hesitated, then decided to address his curiosity directly. Sarah, I hope you don't mind me asking, but yesterday I noticed what appeared to be a specialized patch on your uniform. I've been wondering about your background. Sarah's expression became more guarded, as it had during their previous conversation. She glanced around the busy operations center, noting that several other personnel were within hearing distance. Perhaps we could discuss this privately, Captain? Jake nodded, understanding her discretion. Of course. Would you have time for coffee later? I'd like to hear more about your experience, if you're willing to share. I get off duty at 1800. There's a quiet cafe off base where we could talk. They arranged to meet that evening, and Jake left the operations center with growing anticipation. His instincts told him that Sarah's story would be far more interesting than he had imagined. That evening, Jake arrived at the small cafe Sarah had suggested. It was located in a quiet part of the nearby German town, frequented by off-duty military personnel who wanted to relax away from base activities. Sarah was already seated at a corner table, having changed from her uniform into civilian clothes. "Thank you for meeting me," Jake said as he sat down. "I hope I'm not being too pushy with my curiosity." Sarah smiled, seeming more relaxed in the informal setting. "It's natural to be curious. Most people are when they catch glimpses of things that don't fit their expectations. So, there's more to the story?" Sarah nodded slowly. "Much more, but I don't usually discuss it because it tends to complicate working relationships. People start seeing me differently when they learn about my background." Jake leaned forward with interest. "I promise I won't let it affect our professional relationship. I'm just genuinely curious about someone who clearly has more experience than their current position suggests." Sarah studied Jake's face, evaluating his sincerity. After 15 years in the military, she had developed good judgment about people's character and motivations. Jake seemed genuinely interested rather than simply nosy. "The patch you saw belongs to the 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment," Sarah said quietly. "They're called the Night Stalkers." Jake's eyes widened in recognition. The 160th represented the elite of military aviation, accepting only the most skilled and experienced pilots for the most dangerous missions. Their motto was "Night Stalkers Don't Quit," and their reputation was legendary throughout the military. "You were a Night Stalker pilot?" Jake asked, his voice filled with respect and amazement. "For 8 years. I flew modified C-130s, helicopters, and other aircraft in support of special operations missions worldwide." Jake sat back in his chair, completely stunned. The woman who had served coffee and coordinated logistics was a veteran of the most challenging aviation missions in the military. Her exceptional performance during their emergency suddenly made perfect sense. "That explains why your coordination was so professional. You've been in our position, facing the same kinds of decisions and challenges." "Many times," Sarah confirmed. "I understand what it's like to be in the cockpit when everything goes wrong, when weather deteriorates faster than predicted, when aircraft fail over hostile territory." Jake's respect for Sarah increased exponentially. Night Stalker pilots were legendary for their skill, courage, and ability to succeed in impossible situations. The fact that she had transitioned to logistics work raised obvious questions. "If you don't mind me asking, what made you leave flying for ground duties?" Sarah's expression became more serious. "A mission in Afghanistan. We were extracting special forces teams that had been compromised. Multiple aircraft were involved, and everything that could go wrong did go wrong." She paused, collecting her thoughts before continuing. "My aircraft was hit by ground fire. We lost hydraulics, communications, and navigation systems. I had to make an emergency landing in hostile territory with wounded crew members aboard." Jake listened intently, understanding that Sarah was sharing something deeply personal and probably painful. "We held defensive positions for 6 hours before rescue arrived. I spent that time treating wounded crew members and coordinating with ground forces via emergency radio. Everyone survived, but it was close." "That sounds like exactly the kind of mission Night Stalkers are famous for completing successfully." "We completed the mission," Sarah agreed, "but the experience changed me. I realized I had reached my limit with high-risk combat flying. I requested transfer to support roles where I could use my experience to help other aircrews succeed." Jake began to understand the depth of experience behind Sarah's exceptional logistics coordination. She wasn't just supporting flight operations. She was applying hard-won expertise gained through years of dangerous missions. "Your knowledge showed during our emergency. You understood exactly what we were facing and made recommendations based on real experience. Every weather emergency reminds me of situations I've faced as a pilot. Every aircraft problem brings back memories of mechanical failures over hostile territory. The difference is that now I can help prevent others from experiencing those situations. Jake felt humbled by Sarah's story and her willingness to share it. He also felt a new appreciation for the expertise available in their logistics department, expertise that most air crews never realized existed. Why keep it secret? Your experience could be valuable in training other pilots and coordinating complex operations. Sarah considered the question carefully. Because I don't want to be seen as someone who couldn't handle flying anymore. I want to be judged on my current performance, not on past accomplishments or perceived failures. But yesterday proved that your background enhances your current effectiveness dramatically. Perhaps, Sarah agreed. Colonel Martinez has suggested I should be more open about my experience. Yesterday's events may have convinced me he's right. As they continued talking, Jake gained deeper appreciation for the complexity of Sarah's career transition and the courage required to leave elite flying status for support roles. Her decision represented genuine dedication to helping others succeed, even at the cost of personal recognition. 6 months after their conversation at the cafe, Jake Morrison found himself back in the same briefing room where he had first encountered Sarah Chun. But this time, the dynamics had changed completely. Word of Sarah's Night Stalker background had gradually spread through the pilot community, transforming her from an efficient logistics coordinator into a respected aviation expert. Colonel Martinez had convinced Sarah to take on additional responsibilities that better utilized her unique experience. She now served as both logistics coordinator and aviation safety advisor, reviewing complex missions and providing guidance based on her special operations background. "Good morning, everyone," Sarah announced as she entered the briefing room, carrying the same coffee tray that had started everything. But now, 12 experienced pilots looked up with immediate attention and respect. Jake smiled as she approached with the coffee. "Thank you, Sarah. Any insights on today's mission profile?" "Actually, yes," Sarah replied, setting down the tray. "I've reviewed your flight plan and identified 2 potential issues you might want to consider." The pilots listened carefully as Sarah outlined her concerns about weather patterns and alternate landing sites. Her recommendations carried weight now because everyone understood the depth of experience behind them. Captain Reynolds, who had been part of the emergency mission to Poland, raised his hand. "Sarah, based on your special ops experience, what would you do differently if this were a Night Stalker mission?" Sarah considered the question thoughtfully. Special operations missions require multiple backup plans and constant adaptation. For today's flight, I'd recommend identifying 3 alternate routes instead of 1, and pre-positioning refueling capabilities at 2 additional locations. The pilots took notes as Sarah shared insights that could only come from years of flying the most challenging missions in military aviation. Her transition from serving coffee to providing expert guidance represented a remarkable evolution in both her role and the respect she commanded. After the briefing, Jake approached Sarah as she organized her materials. "It's amazing how much things have changed since that first morning when I spotted your patch." Sarah laughed, remembering her initial reluctance to discuss her background. "You were persistent. I'm glad you pushed me to open up about my experience. The whole squadron benefits from your expertise now." Yesterday's mission brief included suggestions that could only come from someone who's actually flown in combat conditions. Sarah felt satisfaction in knowing that her experience was helping other aircrews avoid the dangers she had faced. "That was always my goal when I transitioned from flying to support roles. I just needed to find the right way to share what I'd learned." Over the following weeks, Sarah's reputation continued to grow throughout the air wing. Pilots specifically requested her involvement in mission planning for complex or high-risk operations. Her ability to anticipate problems and suggest solutions based on real-world experience proved invaluable. The transformation culminated when Colonel Martinez recommended Sarah for promotion and assignment to a new position as Chief Aviation Safety Officer for the entire air wing. The role would combine her logistics expertise with her special operations background to improve safety and effectiveness across all units. The position requires someone with both extensive flying experience and thorough understanding of support operations, Martinez explained during Sarah's performance review. Your unique background makes you the obvious choice. Sarah accepted the promotion with mixed emotions. Part of her missed the excitement and challenge of active flying, but she had found genuine satisfaction in helping other aircrew succeed safely. Jake learned about Sarah's promotion during the next morning's operations briefing. He felt pride in knowing that the woman who had once quietly served coffee was now recognized as one of the most qualified aviation professionals on the base. That afternoon, Jake stopped by Sarah's new office to offer congratulations. The space was larger than her previous workspace, with windows overlooking the flight line where aircraft prepared for daily missions. "Congratulations on the promotion," Jake said as he entered. "Well-deserved recognition for outstanding performance." "Thank you," Sarah replied, gesturing for him to sit down. "It feels strange to have an office with my name on the door after years of working behind the scenes. You've earned it. Your guidance has probably prevented more accidents and incidents than anyone will ever know." Sarah appreciated Jake's recognition, but she remained focused on the future rather than past accomplishments. "The new position will let me work with aircrews throughout the wing. I'm hoping to establish training programs that share lessons learned from special operations missions." "That sounds like exactly what we need. Most pilots never get exposed to the kind of experience you bring." Their conversation was interrupted by an urgent communication from the tower. All units, we have an aircraft declaring emergency. C-130 inbound with multiple system failures." Sarah immediately activated emergency coordination procedures while Jake monitored radio communications. The emergency involved a training flight that had suffered hydraulic failure and partial electrical problems during a routine exercise. "Tower, emergency aircraft, we have lost primary flight controls. Request immediate approach clearance and emergency vehicles." Sarah coordinated ground response while analyzing the reported problems. Her experience with similar emergencies allowed her to anticipate the aircraft's needs and prepare appropriate support. "Emergency vehicles are responding," she radioed to the tower. "Medical personnel and fire suppression equipment are standing by." Jake watched Sarah coordinate the emergency response with the same calm competence he had observed during their mission to Poland. Her ability to remain focused under pressure while managing multiple complex tasks represented exactly the kind of leadership the Air Wing needed. The emergency aircraft landed safely after a tense approach, with the crew executing procedures perfectly despite their system's failures. Ground crews quickly surrounded the aircraft to ensure complete safety and begin assessing the mechanical problems. "Excellent coordination," Jake commented as they watched the successful emergency response. "Your experience showed again in how you anticipated their needs and prepared resources." Sarah felt satisfaction in knowing that her background had contributed to another successful outcome. Every emergency teaches us something that might help with the next one. That's why sharing experience is so important. Over the following months, Sarah's impact on Air Wing operations became increasingly evident. Accident rates decreased, emergency responses improved, and pilot confidence increased knowing that someone with her background was overseeing safety operations. Jake remained one of Sarah's strongest supporters, often citing her expertise when discussing aviation safety with other pilots. Their professional relationship had evolved from the chance encounter over coffee into mutual respect between experienced aviators. A year after their first meeting, Jake found himself back in a briefing room listening to Sarah present a comprehensive review of Air Wing safety improvements. The statistics showed dramatic reductions in incidents and emergencies, with corresponding increases in mission success rates. "The improvements we've seen result from better preparation, enhanced training, and more effective emergency response," Sarah explained to the assembled pilots and commanders. But the real credit belongs to the aircrews who implement these procedures professionally. After the presentation, Jake approached Sarah with genuine admiration. "A year ago, you were quietly serving coffee and coordinating logistics. Now you're transforming how this entire wing approaches aviation safety. Sarah smiled, remembering their first conversation and her reluctance to reveal her background. It just shows what can happen when people are willing to share their experience and others are open to learning from it. Your story proves that expertise can come from unexpected places. I'm grateful I was persistent enough to ask about that patch. Sarah looked out the window at aircraft preparing for afternoon missions, each crew benefiting from procedures and insights developed through her unique combination of special operations experience and logistics expertise. I'm grateful you pushed me to open up. It took your curiosity and persistence to help me realize that hiding my background wasn't helping anyone. Their conversation ended as duty called them both back to their respective responsibilities. Jake prepared for another mission, confident that Sarah's oversight would help ensure his safe return. Sarah returned to her office to continue developing programs that would protect future aircrews. The transformation that had begun with a simple observation about a partially visible patch had evolved into a model for how military organizations could better utilize the diverse experience of their personnel. Sarah's journey from quiet logistics coordinator to respected safety leader demonstrated the value of recognizing and embracing hidden expertise. As evening approached Ramstein Air Base, aircraft returned from daily missions while others prepared for night operations. In her office, Sarah reviewed the day's activities with satisfaction, knowing that her transition from special operations pilot to safety advocate had found its proper purpose. The coffee that had started their relationship was long forgotten, but the respect and professional collaboration that grew from that first encounter continued to benefit everyone involved. Jake's persistence in asking about Sarah's background had unlocked expertise that enhanced the safety and effectiveness of an entire air wing. Sometimes the most important discoveries come from simple curiosity about the people working quietly around us. And sometimes the most valuable expertise is found in the most unexpected places.